What's up, everybody? My name is Ali.
And I'm Rena.
Welcome back to the No Diet. So, today we're going to talk about why sugar is bad and the war against fat. And, everybody's always said that, that fat is bad, fat's the enemy, and we all have to eat low fat foods, and that's the only way you're going to lose weight. But that's a misconception. The sugar industry has actually made us think that. And they've been keeping us fat for decades, actually. People have been eating fat forever. It's one of the most oldest and basic nutrients.
Yeah, that's true because when you think about it, even as long as the world existed, you had hunters and there was no such thing as fat free or low
Right.
fat or anything like that. And people weren't overweight at that time.
Yeah. So, what happened? Why do we all get fat?
So, to answer that question, in the early 20th century, heart disease was a fairly new thing and it was very rare. At that time, doctors were very concerned because they weren't sure what the cause was,
In 1955, President Eisenhower had a heart attack, and it prompted Americans to even be more concerned about heart disease.
which triggered scientists to start research to find out what was the cause of heart disease. So while all this research was going on, the sugar industry began paying scientists off to skew their data and numbers to make fat the culprit for heart disease and not sugar.
There were a few scientists that were saying that sugar was the culprit, but they were being pushed into the shadows by all the other scientists that were getting paid to skew their data and show that fat was the real culprit.
However, if you look at the real data, there is a direct correlation between the rise of sugar consumption and the rise of heart disease and obesity. So what ended up happening is the sugar industry began lobbying and got health panels filled with scientists who would support their idea of fat being demonized. And because of all this, Americans were convinced that fat was actually the enemy and the reason that everyone was getting sick, gaining weight, heart disease, all of that.
And in fact, that's not true at all. If you consume more sugar than their liver can process, it's stored as fat. And
That's what makes you gain weight.
right, and that data was suppressed and not released, and it was overshadowed. In fact, they even called it fake science when it was out. And believe it or not, it's sugar is actually more addictive than cocaine. So fast forward to the 1980s, where the USDA actually recommended Americans to be on a low-fat diet, and since then, obesity has skyrocketed.
And the reason for that is because all low fat foods, when you take fat out of them, they become very tasteless. And to compensate for that lack of taste, they're added with sugar.
Right, lots of sugar.
So if you look at a label, if you pick up something that's low fat or fat free, just take a look at that sugar in the back and you'll see that it has a lot of sugar in there.
Right. And what's sugar? Sugar at the end of the day is a carb. And what we've been saying
It's
is
the worst kind of carb.
it's the worst kind of carb, right? And I mean, we can talk about artificial sugars, which are even worse.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just talk about the natural stuff. Even that's not good for you.
Mm-hmm. So bottom line, what we're here to share with you guys and what we've said before in our other posts and videos is that sugar is the number one thing you really, really, really want to pay attention to and you really want to cut out of your diet as much as possible. All these years of marketing and lobbying by the sugar industry are the things that have Americans confused because there's just not factual data out there. But if you cut sugar out of your diet, you will lose weight.
And actually, there is factual data out there, but you got to find it because you got to cut through all the bullshit that's out there. Because the big companies and the marketing of it, they're gonna try and sway you one way, and you need to educate yourself and find the truth. So we still actually eat some sugar. You can't just have none. I
Right.
mean, we have our little sweet tooths here or there, and we'll have some chocolate or sometimes. But just remember, everything's in moderation. You can't have sugar in everything. You're gonna have fat-free this and and sugar on that, and have your Diet Coke, which is loaded with sugar. I don't want to start with that, but I mean, just be mindful of what you're putting in your body, and you just look at those labels. Even those labels aren't even 100% perfect, but you got to make sure that you start somewhere. And if you know what's going in your body,
And sugar is definitely not a replacement for fat. You can't, just because fat is called fat, it is not the thing that makes you fat. It is such a misconception because of all these things that have been going on in the past.
right, fat does
So,
not make you fat.
people think the word fat, I mean, literally, there's two meanings for it, I guess, because one is like the fat content of something and the other one is someone gaining weight, but it is not the same thing.
Right.
So when you go out there and get your foods, steer away from low fat, fat free, anything like that. You want to eat full fat everything. You know, you want to look at everything that you're taking into your body. It's not just one thing or the other, like we've said many, many times before. But sugar, you know, like Ali said, it's you can't cut it out completely, but you want to limit it as much as you can.
Right. So there are some substitutes you can have, and if you want, follow our Instagram channel at the No Diet, and we'll be able to show you a bunch of different alternatives that you can have. Like we still eat some chocolate, we still eat, some bars and different things, and they all have some sugar in it, but very
Some do,
little,
some don't.
you know.
Some have substitutes in there,
Right.
like healthy substitutes, nothing like artificial sweeteners or anything like that.
Right. Definitely no artificial sweeteners. So that wraps up our video for today on sugar and why it's the devil, you know. So join us next Tuesday for our next video. Peace out, everybody.
Bye.